All right. Today is Saturday, so I'm talking Gits with Mason Knox. He's gonna,
Howdy, yeah.
yeah, and I'm gonna learn a little bit more about Gitmob because it's straight up eluding me. But of course, before we get into that, thanks to all my patrons, Baird of Dice for supporting the channel, Wiberian for the art. Yeah, let's do it. So Mason, can you tell me just a little bit about yourself? Like, what are your credentials? Why should people give a shit about
Oh,
what you have to say?
yeah. Well, first of all, you shouldn't, okay? But if you have stuck around to listen, yeah, my name's Mason Knox. I'm a player, a pretty competitive player here from the Pacific Northwest. I started playing Warhammer like right before 3rd edition came out with Mega Gargants. So I was like, oh, I love these big Mega Gargants. I'm gonna paint these big guys and do awesome. And then all of a sudden 3rd edition came out and I was a big bully and I was everyone's enemy and all that jazz. But yeah, I don't get to travel too much up north to where you are to the other parts of the country, but here PNW I perform pretty well. I golden ticketed last year at the U.S. Open Tacoma. I lost in the finals and got to go to Worlds last year, which was really awesome.
That's sick.
Yeah, this year I've qualified again. I've got my tickets. So I'll be going back to Atlanta in November. I'm going to be a part of the PNW NA Masters that's going on. So we've got a team of 8 players from the Pacific Northwest that auditioned. You know, what applied, that's the right word, to do that. So I'm going to be a part of that team. So I never claim to know everything, but I definitely play with a competitive mindset. I'm looking for things that are strong. I'm playing the game at that level, but I'm also here for a great time and just love Warhammer.
Yeah, and I always felt the same way. Like, that's why I kind of started this, was not to sort of tell everybody that I knew all the answers, but to put out into the world what I thought and to see what bounced back.
Yeah,
right? To see
exactly.
where people agreed and where they didn't agree, and the goal was to sort of, keep the conversation going and to improve my own game and my own understanding as we move forward, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that just putting all the information out there, being able to absorb all of the different information, allow yourself to be challenged, allow your ideas to be challenged, but also, be strong in what you believe. But look for and find resources that jive with you, that meet at the same values as you, that are, all of any information you get is going to be valuable. So
100%. So we're talking Gitmob today.
Yeah, Gitmob today. I've got my stream showing, hopefully, a little TTS action here. So this specifically is the Gitmob Army of Renown that I wanted to talk about. We were chatting in the Discord about it a little bit. Decided to kind of throw this together last minute so I can share some ideas. I've played about 7 or 8 games so far with this Army of Renown list. This is the Drogs Army of Renown. You do give up a ton, no doubt, to play this subfaction, but I think it's got a lot of legs. And if I'm hedging my bets a little bit, banking on the new meta, the new GHB, the new way to play is going to be a lot more like tactical movement, multi-staged things. I think that an army like this is going to excel, so I'm like all in right now to master all of the tricks and techniques and movement shenanigans that I want to get down, so that I'll be ready to go when that new environment hits. Again, it's a gamble, but I think it'll pay off.
Well, and just, again, you can just, learn things, and, diving deep into the game is going to be good regardless. So,
Right.
Can you just quickly go over what the rules for the Army of Renown are?
Yeah, so I'll give a brief rundown. Big one is that your entire army can deep strike, kind of like Beasts of Chaos. If you want to, you can put the whole thing in reserve, and they come in what I call outflank, which is on a board edge, wholly within 6 of that board edge and outside of 9 of enemies. So your whole army can do that if you want to. Of course, you are very limited with your artifact and your heroic trait and your spell lore, because you get the ones that the army gives you. The takeaway from the 3 of those is that one of your snarl bosses has a wholly within 9 6-inch or 6-up ward rather, as long as he is undamaged. So it's kind of nice because there's actually not a lot of ways to get wards and gets, so that's kind of cool.
It's true.
There's another one that's really big, and another 2 actually, and they're both dependent on if you get charged or if you charge your opponent. One of them says that if you get charged with any of your models, and they aren't in combat with something that didn't charge, on a 4-up, they can escape at the start of combat. So I call them combat funnies. You can use that combat funny. If you get charged on a 4-up, you just walk out of combat. You just leave, right? Then you got 12-inch move on basically everybody. So that's one option, and it's a 4-up to do that. The other one is when you charge an enemy, you can roll a 3-up, and if you do, they cannot pile in. And the cool thing is that with both of those abilities, they can be used on either side of the turn. So you can be doing no pile in for them on your charge phase and with a counter charge. And you can be getting out on the 4-up in their turn or on your turn with a counter charge. So a lot of freedom with when to do those, but they are dice rolls, right? Both cases,
Sure.
both instances are a 3-up and a 4-up. So
what are you giving up that you really miss?
The retreat for mortals, I guess, is kind of the big one. This army is not going to have access to the moving sun. So, like, obviously, there is a loss there, because that could be a fair bit of mortals when you do that. It's not that big of a deal, because the chariots have their thing. You are escaping out of combat with between Drog and your allegiance ability and power throughs. Like, you know, you're getting out of combat because this is all about a mobility kind of army. I think the biggest thing right now that you're giving up though is a proper wizard, you know, and
Sure.
I can take the Frazzle Git, so I can have a wizard if I want to, but you have a minimal lore. Not that I'm a huge fan of the Gloomspite lore, but you get the one thing that you get, and then you can take an endless spell or any of the other ones, and that would be the only reason you're kind of doing that. So yeah, losing access to the moon is unfortunate, but it's not all the time, so it doesn't sting too much. And then not having a wizard is a downside, you know. So those are the two things you're giving up for that unknown, huge potential abilities.
So let's get into it.
Yeah, for sure. So I planned to show you today here how I have been kind of like setting up this army. Of course, it's always going to change depending on the opponent, depending on the situation, but I kind of wanted to show a few examples of what my approach is to this and how I'm like trying to play this. It is 3 drops right now. It's Drog with 4 a reinforced unit of Sunsteel Awilas. Then we have a Snarl Boss and 3 reinforced Snarlfang Cavalry. Those are the new 3-mans. So this is 3x6 packs here. Then the 3rd regiment is the Snarl Boss, a reinforced unit of Snarlfang Riders, the 5-man, a 2nd reinforced unit of the Sunsteel Awilas, and then a Doomdiver Catapult. So pretty maxed out, except for Drog. He's kind of got a weird inclusion of the Sunsteel Awilas. Just a brief explanation there. There's really not a lot better to do with that. You know, this I could put the 1 unit of Cav, I suppose, and have them be aggressive, but it's not great attacks, and so I'd rather just have the chariots alone, one of my tankier things with Drog, and I'm choosing bodyguard most of the time, so we can talk about that right now. I won't go through like setup tactics and how you should you know, slow drop if your opponent's going to outdrop you or anything like that, but what I will say, and we'll move quickly here just for the sake of argument, what I'm generally trying to do with the General's Regiment is set up these chariots in such a way so that I can put Drog right behind them, so that anywhere in front of him would be, or sorry, anything in front of the chariots, if they were to come into this kind of middle area, I want Drog's ability to be live, but I want him to be safe. So
right.
What we can do here, yeah, is we can kind of just show, again, I'm just doing it quick, but you can get the rough idea. I want Drog to be somewhere like this so that he's safe from the front line, pretty free and clear, but he is going to apply that debuff if they were to come in, okay? Then what I'm usually trying to do is take a unit of, or the reinforced unit of the Riders, and be throwing them off to one side. Left to right doesn't really matter. These guys are incredibly awesome at like stopping deep strike and like trying to bait shooting targets and things of that nature. They've got a built-in 3 claw steps ahead kind of ability in the enemy movement phase. They can move D6, and so the nice thing is like you could move D6 and then countercharge if you wanted to, because it's not like it's not run.
Because it's not a redeploy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also mentioning redeploy, you can do that D6 move, see what you get. Maybe you get like a 4, and now, okay, now I'll redeploy this unit. Boom. So you deep struck 9 away, and now you're 13 away. Something like that. You know what I mean? So a lot of fun trick stuff you can do before you're needing to roll those 3-ups, 4-ups, whatever, just with this unit alone on this side, right? So we can
control
look, see.
Space. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to deny, just with this block right here, you're going to deny this whole area from deep strike. If they have to come in 9 away here, or they have to move up and charge at you, right? And if you're not afraid of the charge because they're playing safe, then you use their ability, you creep up, right? And you get a free redeploy towards them, you know? So a lot of flexibility here with that unit. They're gonna take one side usually on their own. The other unit of chariots is kind of going to, I'm just gonna drop this for us real quick. This other unit of chariots is going to kind of take a similar position on this side. Obviously, not as tricksy as the riders, but tanky. All things considered, it's just 24 wounds on a 4-up. I know it's not crazy tanky, but for my army, that's pretty tanky. So both of these guys are going to be able to threaten take the flanks if and when we need it, as well as be screening because we have huge bases, able to do lots of stuff here. When we talk about the Doomdiver Catapult, almost every game I'm putting this thing in reserve. The reason why is because I want to keep it safe, and really I want it in your backfield. Like, I want this to be really annoying and just creeping up on you. And spoiler alert, I'm usually putting 6 wolves with it. So almost every game so far, I've put a Doomdiver and these 6 wolves in reserve as my only reserve things, with the intent that you're going to want to come at me, right? Everyone looks at this army and thinks low saves, going to die quick, right? But I've got all these tricks you got to consider, and usually people are going to leave the backfield, and that's where I can put in the catapult, I can put in 6 of these guys, and start really harassing your backline for not a lot of investment, you know? These 2 units alone are less than 400 points.
Can you put the whole army in reserve?
Absolutely. Yep,
and
if you really wanted to.
And you're not because... Like, is there a reason or a time that you would want to?
I think in the current environment, there's not. I guess if there was something that was like so much shooting that no matter where I deployed, like old Sentinels, right, or even like a 60 Sentinel build, maybe I'm putting a lot more in reserve. I think a primary reason I don't want to put everything in reserve is because it is the 6-inch board drop and not like the 9 or 12-inch board drop or anywhere. So that wholly within 6 and outside of 9 actually makes it so your opponent, if they're being really precise and technical with it, can zone
really
off a lot of space.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I want enough that like you have to worry about it, but also enough that I can still maintain board presence and honestly like try to pull you in different directions.
So the point is, I guess, really that you need to have a plan.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. This is an army I think that you want to have a big plan going into it. The kind of the philosophy of this army is like play 3rd edition, you know? Like capitalize on movement, score 46 to 50 points every game. Pull your models, do stuff, be asking yourself, why am I moving here? Why am I doing this? Do I need to go this far, right? Be like blocking, run and gun, you know, you need to have a long-term strategy and multiple short-term options depending on what your opponent is presenting to you.
Right.
Yeah. I'll say quickly here, normally we're putting 1 unit of Snarlfang in between the 2 chariots. The last unit of Snarlfang, if I'm really scared of their alpha, what I've done, sorry for going quick here, is I've actually taken, it's going to be tough to do, I've actually taken these guys, tools are not cooperating with us, and put them in between Drog and the chariots, just on the off chance that they're able to like break through or have a unit sneak by or they shoot chariots and I have to pull and make space. Like I've done something like this to just really protect Drog, but make sure I'm projecting that aura as far as I can.
And just to clarify, Drog's aura is a -1 to hit, right?
It is, yes. 6. If you have an enemy unit within 6 inches, they're -1 to hit, and not only that, they also cannot all-out attack.
Cool. So it's your -1 to hit. That's it. It's like the Fellwaters, right, with their save, but with hits.
Exactly. Yep. A few things to keep in mind. this army is quite fragile, right? These snarl bosses are like on 5 health.
Yeah, is it?
5 up save, yeah. Drog, that great ability, he's got no ward and 7 health, so like, you know, it's fragile. You want to try to be dictating the pace and the control of the game, right? I know it's easier said than done, but a few things to think about. If they have a lot of 3-up save or ways to buff it, like let's say Elite OBR, Elite Stormcast, Slaves to Darkness, things of those nature, like those armies are strong, you know, and they're good into, even if this army had +1 save across the board, just like the army was just better armored, those armies would still give it a hard time because those are tanky armies that hit hard. So that's what that army does. Don't play into its strengths, right? Avoid those fights, do what you do best and outbody them, outmaneuver them, win the board, because you're going to lose fights. You know, there's no doubt about it. If they have Horde, however, you're actually in a pretty good spot because Horde would normally, you'd think, would outnumber you, which is the case here. However, your volume 2 damage, no rend attacks do really good into Horde, whereas when they have that 3-up, 2-up, you know, save stacking stuff, the few armies that do, sure, yeah, I'm not going to get a lot through, but I am going to throw 100 2 damage attacks at no rend at you.
So you're bad against armor, but you're actually pretty good against health.
Yeah. And honestly, like if you're a 4-up going to a 3-up, this army still does a lot of damage, you know? You are going to roll 1s and 2s. And almost everything coming at you is 2 damage, right? Whenever these Snarlfang cav charge, it's the riders on top are +1 damage on the charge, and the mounts are always 4s, 3s, no rend 2 damage. That's on them, it's on the little wolves, it's on the chariots, right? So that's just a lot. It really is a lot of damage coming at you, and if you have like a couple of poor save sequences, it can really gum you up, especially when you think about the Snarlfang cavalry here. When they have the go turn, I could have it where like all 3 unit of Snarlfang strike, because they have strike first when they charge. They also get +5 control score when they charge. So you could have like all 3 of them go, then Drog, then pull in another unit. You know, you could actually have like everything fight, and you really do start to surround stuff with these units. Because if you look at the board right now, this is without the Doom Diver and the other Cav, and look how full this is.
Yeah.
One thing to call out, we didn't mention it earlier, but you do get the Bad Moon Loon Shrine in this army, and you do get access to the Revive. So the Chariots can't come back because they're war machines, but the Cav and the Riders do come back. So like in this case here, just keeping in mind it comes back wholly within 12, I thought to myself, okay, I want to make sure that I've got the ability to tag at least 1 point over here with that wholly within 12. That was kind of why I put this here. But you do have access to this, which is nice. You don't have to drop it again. These can be a liability, so if you are concerned about that, then just keep it off board.
And is it wholly within 12 and outside of 3 of enemy models still?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay. Yeah, it would have to be.
Right. But yeah, just talk about the Doom Diver real quick. I know you had a topic in your last episode about how to roll for it, which is it was a good breakdown by you, so I would suggest people go check out your other stuff and listen to that. But the Doom Diver does have some kind of funky attack debate happening on how its re-rolls work.
We talked a little bit about this before, and the argument that you're about to make, I think, is a fair argument.
Yeah.
Right? And I if I was a TO, I'd rule on it differently, but I know other TOs have ruled in the case that you're about to make. So yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, and just to mention what you said there, always just check with your TO. If you're gonna play this model, just find out how they want to rule it and just play it that way.
Yeah, or just with your friends in your play group.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want to be it's supposed to be fun and it's supposed to be good sport, so see what your friends think. Right?
Right.
Until we get some clarification.
Right, exactly. I'll use the dice roller here to kind of talk about this, right? Normally, what this would be is 4 attacks on 4s and 3s, rend 3 for 3 damage, right? Doom Diver's got the ability to re-roll failed hits, but for every dice you re-roll, you reduce the rend by 1. So one thought, which I'll pose as kind of like your preferred method perhaps, is I would roll all 4 of these dice looking for 4s and 3s. All right, 1 was successful and 3 failed. I'm going to re-roll all 3, reduce my rend by 3. Let's see. Okay, these all fail, right? So nothing happens. So just 1 goes through at rend 3, okay? What I believe to be, and kind of how we've postured here, is that you should actually do these to your advantage, to your benefit, 1 at a time. And the reason why is because technically we roll dice and slow roll as the proper way, and we have a speed roll that almost all of us use 95% of the time to expedite rolling dice, right? Technically, you'd roll dice one at a time for all of your attacks, yada yada, but we usually take all 30 of them and roll them at once because we're not crazy people, okay? For this Doom Diver, it is to your advantage to roll these one at a time. The reason being is because if somehow, hopefully this works out, I roll this and it's a 4, okay, we're just pretend this was a 4 and it was successful, and then I go to roll my second one and it was a 5. Okay, look, so I've had 2 hit at Rend 3 with no rerolls now. I'm going to keep doing this. Okay, another one. Let's hope this one fails, actually. Okay, sweet. So now what I can say is, awesome, I have 3 hits at Rend 3, and I have 1 that I'm going to reroll potentially for Rend 2. Oh, it was a good. Okay, awesome. So now you're going to owe me 3 at Rend 3, 1 at Rend 2. I think to be more technical, what we should do when we slow roll these is attack, wound, save for every single one die at a time, right? That is how slow roll works, and that is why this way of doing it works, right? For the most part, though, how I just did it is how I've done it with my opponents, so we can just expedite the hits, right? But I do have to wound with these still, right? So I'd have to say, okay, boom, these Rend 3s. Oh, only 1 goes through for Rend 3, and then the one at Rend 2, let's see. Okay, is unsuccessful. These dice stuck, right? So
my counter argument to that would be then you should slow roll the whole game, right?
You could, yeah.
Well, because if we're gonna slow roll, then let's slow roll. But if we're gonna fast roll, right? It's like,
yeah.
So and again, like I'm not trying to argue about it right now necessarily, but I'm going to.
No,
but
no. I totally get it, right? And I think on one hand we could both agree that argument is a tiny bit silly. However, fair. Sure, we could do slow roll. You could do that the whole time if you wanted to. That's why people starting to get into arguments about like clocks and time. Like dice is already one of the slower things that we do. So of course I also see the argument like why would we look to make it slower? I think that what I've said is, I agree that it's a little obtuse and it's a little silly, and it's likely the only thing in the game that does benefit from doing the slow roll, but it is a way that you can technically play that rule to the fairest, right? So, or to the what their intent is or where they ultimately land. I could totally see a world where they're like, yeah, just stop doing that, and you can re-roll it all or once after all the dice have been rolled, or something. Add some text so that it's got to be the way that your interpretation of it there. And
they just need an example.
Yeah.
Or like how would you reword it so that you would roll them all at once?
I don't know. I'm definitely not the best at the rules text to be accurate, but something to the tune of like after all of the hits have been rolled,
right. Sure.
You can choose to re-roll any amount of those hit dice. For each you re-roll, subtract the Rend characteristic for all subsequent wound rolls.
Just a clarifying clause or two.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that gets really wordy, and I'm sure like the rules lawyers would have issue with the exact words I said, but something to that effect, right? So like, it's after all the hits, and then it's for all of the next subsequent X. I think that's a way that you could do it. And again, it is only 4 dice, so it's like not that big of a deal. And
sure.
I had more. It took longer for me to explain to my opponent what I was doing than it ever took for me to make the die rolls. So it's not that egregious, but fair arguments all around there. Just the Doom Diver's got a little bit of a weird reroll thing. If you're not worried about it, just reroll whatever you're going to reroll.
Yeah,
and do it the fast.
I think that what you said at the beginning, check with your TO, check with your gaming community, and then do what you feel comfortable with.
For sure. And all of that silliness aside, in this army, what I'm really liking to do with this guy is like bring him in, be a threat, shoot stuff that they don't want shot, and just like make them have to keep things back to protect small heroes, right? So that sometimes I can come in pretty close, so I can come in outside of guarded hero range if I really wanted to. I just have to be 9 away. So there are things you got to consider with that, and it is 3 damage attacks. Like I played against Deepkin at an RTT recently, and I brought him down on turn 1. Normally I'm bringing him down on turn 2 because I have to go first, but I brought him down on turn 1 this time and put him like 15 inches away from a lone Achillean king, and shot my attack at him and just dropped that Achillean King, right? Then on the counter shoot, and granted I did get a little lucky, I killed a shark in covering fire with one on 5s, you know, because of the reroll. Sometimes you just spike a couple hits, and the sharks don't have crazy good saves. So like it is actually like your only access to rend in this army.
I'm kind of surprised, to be honest, that you're not running like 2 Doom Divers. Have you played around with that at all?
I have a little bit. I only really want to buy one because it's a obnoxious model, so that's part of the consideration, is just perhaps not the most optimal. But another thing is you can only do the reroll with one of them, so there is less equity in the second one. All of that to say, it's still very powerful, and so you could like save the rerolls for one and then give another one all out attack. So you've got 1 on 3s 3s and 1 on 4s 3s with the reroll. That's always an option that you could do to look to maximize that. I'd have to toy around with what I'd lose. I don't know if it's worth giving up like 6 of the Snarl thing here for a second catapult. I don't think I've played enough games to say quite yet.
Yeah, it's really strong. I mean, I like 3D printed stuff for really overly expensive models like this.
Right. Yeah. It's not as egregious as the Snarl boss on Warwheela or the Frazzle Git. Like the $100 for a chariot hero just blew my mind. I've still yet to buy that, but I've got everything else here on the table, and I've got chariots for days. I love those suckers.
Yeah. Do you play at a lot of GW sponsored events?
I do the Tacoma Open every year because that's local for me here in Washington State. So yes, but I'm not against 3D prints at all. I used to have a lot more than I do today because I flip armies all the time. But
sure.
But yeah, I see the one you sent me. That one's really cool looking.
Yeah, I got 2 of those.
There you go. Yeah, look at that. It took me 45 minutes. You know, I know it takes a couple days, but another thing that I should mention about the army real quick is that the Sunsteel Awilas, both reinforced units, and the Snarlfang Riders do also have some like 15-inch shooting attacks. It is 4s and 5s for no rend for 1 damage, but that's like basically the same odds as rolling horde clears on people, but it doesn't have to be horde. So collectively, if they can deal like 2 or 3 damage, that's like what other armies usually get for free mortal wounds. We're just getting with free dinky shooting attacks, but it can really pay off. I also use it to like pepper down endless spells that are in the way, because those are normally on like 6s and 6s anyways. So if I can hit them for a collective 9 to 12 saves and they're on 6s 6s, most of those endless spells die.
Yeah, into the right targets, like pepper, like that spray shooting can be quite effective for sure. Right.
We did talk about making Drog bodyguard. The Sunsteel Awila's bodyguard for Drog. If I get a second option, I'm almost always choosing priority target on the Doom Diver catapult.
Sure.
Because I can deep strike it, I can actually get that off more frequently than you might expect. And so the nice thing is, if I get to shoot my favorite targets with that, I can have more power throughs, because doing power through on the Sunsteel Awilas is really awesome. It allows these guys to like go forth, be mobile, try to deal their mortals, deal some wolf damage, and then get the heck back and surround a Drog again at the end of the day.
Because he's essentially your mid-board tar pit.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yep. And then I know that you talked about the wolf boss there, the Snarl boss.
Yep.
Can you tell me more about his role and like how you're using him in the army?
For sure, yeah. So Snarlboss has a really cool ability that if he charges, he can pick 2 Gitmob things in combat with him and give them +1 attacks on their mounts. So if he charges in with a couple units of Snarlfang or chariots or whatever, he can buff their mount attacks. So these guys would go from 3 mounts each to 4, and these guys go from like 6 to 7 or something like that with the mount attacks.
And you were talking before about like getting in multiple units of Snarlfang or the cavalry into one unit, like doggy piling onto stuff.
Yeah, no pun intended there. Yeah. Another neat thing we didn't talk about is you could put all of the Snarlfang and a Snarl boss in reserve, and then if they leave you an opening, you could like drop, have multiple units on 9 inches. The next ability for a Snarlfang is just a static +2 to charge aura, wholly within 12 of a Snarl boss.
7-ups. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. 7-ups on those, and so like that could be really substantial. So that's the big thing that the Snarl boss is doing is a 12-inch +2 to charge on your turn and their turn, right? So we talked about how you want to be countercharging, you want to be looking to do that to benefit from your abilities. He's going to really help elevate that. And he's also going to combo really well because the whole army except for the Doom Diver is movement 12. So as you're sending in the Snarlfang, even if the boss was back for safety and not going to do the charge, you just run him up. And now he's in range for all of your stuff to get the +2 charge. And we're taking 2 of those here to just make sure that I've got that spread anywhere that I want. You know, all of my guys are going to be having this +2 to charge. So I'm kind of just like layering all of these moving parts that make it really hard for my opponent to make their math work.
Do you ever think about putting this Snarl boss in reserve and just dropping him in? No, because it's at the board edge. That's right. I keep thinking for some reason that you can just drop him outside of 9, but he's got to be outside of
right.
Within 6, right? So that tech doesn't work. Okay.
I think if you're going to do like 2 or 3 units with a Snarl boss, just because you have full information and your opponent like left a big opening that you see a play, I think there's something to say about that. But for the most part, I think you just want to put a couple things in reserve because it's really nice to force your opponent to be honest, as I say, right? Like they have to keep the backboard zoned, or they just have to seed it, and either way, that's a win for you.
Yeah, because you're buying space one way or the other. It's something that Cruel Boys players learned with our sneaky sneaking. It's like, oh, they can just zone you out of terrain in their backfield. It's like, yeah, they can, but then they're spreading out their units in their backfield. Like, fine.
Yeah,
like,
and I've seen people argue. Right? I've seen people argue, why do you need deep strike when your army is so fast? And I say that's the perfect time that I also want deep strike.
Right.
Because now they have to think about the fact that I can get to them, I can leave them entirely, and if they start coming to me, I can come into the backfield, right? So I've kind of got all bases covered. You know, it's nice. No teleport, no magic. Your endless spells are really annoying to me. If you face Croak, like, just Godspeed. And, you know, there are weaknesses here. I don't think it's the ultimate beats everything list, but I think that if you pilot it well and you get decently lucky on those 3-up and 4-up abilities, so between Drog's ability for your unit to fight and then get out of combat, your other ability when charged, they can, a 4-up can just dip before they ever get fought, and to stop piling in, all of those things in their own can deny battle tactics. So that's something your opponent always has to think about. You should try to be on the up and up with your opponent because it is a lot of tricksy things. But in one of my games, the Mega Gargant was right here. He charged into these guys, barely got the charge. I got the 4-up for these guys to dip out of combat. So, you know, he piled in. These Snarlfang weren't here at the time, but now he wasn't able to fight anything with that War Stomper. You know, it was a War Stomper in my home field, which is a little annoying, but it was going to be like a dead unit of Sunsteel Wheelers, and instead these guys got to whip around and touch this point and deny him taking that. So, you know, it's cute what you can do with it, but it is 4-ups.
How difficult would you say this army is to pilot?
I would say it's a lot of thinking. There's a lot of mistakes that you can make. You really need to be thinking about, like, when you charge, is it worth it to send everything in to maximize the attacks, or are you actually charging for different space so that you can, you know, string something out to barely touch this objective and then connect with the enemy here and then fill this gap, right? Is that actually what you need to do with this charge, or do you need to have all of them connect for damage? So you're constantly having to think about that. You really need to be thinking turns ahead. You know, you need to be planning where exactly your opponent can go, what is a worst case scenario, what are you doing next, so that you can be sequencing battle tactics correctly, at least in the current environment. And Destruction has the hardest time with that because we have the worst, you know, faction battle tactics. Just like objectively, they're the worst and the hardest ones to do.
Yeah.
So it does make our sequencing that much more challenging. So just with that in mind, you're paper thin, you have no rend, you're fast as hell, you gotta be thinking ahead, and you gotta play to your strengths.
So pretty difficult, like on the more difficult side of the spectrum.
Yeah, 8-5 or 9 out of 10 probably.
Right. Okay. But when used properly,
I will tell you,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's tons of fun. It's one of the most fun armies I've played since 4th edition came out. Night Haunt right at the beginning of the edition was super fun. It's hard to overlook that, but it was also busted as hell. So But this army is like really fun because your opponent is just like, what is happening here? As you like run around and like just get into it a little bit, like RP with it a little bit. You've just got chariots and wolves just running all over this field. It looks crazy on the battlefield when everything is deployed. It's a lot of wolves.
If your opponent has zoned out your deep strike for a Doom Diver catapult and your cavalry in the back line, when are you bringing it out, and where are you? I guess you're just bringing it out on the left or the right, and like what, turn 3 if your opponent has zoned you out the entire time, or are you bringing it out sooner?
I think that's a good question. I do think it kind of depends. I think if they're dedicated for multiple turns from allowing me to drop it anywhere, like bravo, but also you should be losing. You should likely have seeded the whole front end of the board.
It depends on the armies. Like, for example, I think playing against Sylvaneth, I think Sylvaneth has like enough, like with Tree Revenants or with the Gossamet Archers, I think they have enough mobility and throwaway units that they could easily just commit one to the left and one to the right, and then just be like, right? Like, it depends on the army, right? But
for sure. And so what I've done, again, mission dependent, of course, is I've tried to like move up the Snarlfang into a midfield board like this, and then drop the catapult at like 18 inches from the target that I want to be shooting at. So even if they redeploy, I've got action. You leave enough space so these things can still do their tricks to get around and protect it. But protected by them is kind of a nice thing. I don't think I'd want to bring him in after, I don't think I want to wait till turn 3. There are some games where I've brought him in turn 1 in a safer position over here because they did zone me out.
Yeah.
And normally when they zone me out, I can start pinching aside, because if you are thinner, it makes my target selection a little easier, but my positioning a little weaker. So that's kind of how I evaluate it. Target priority would become important there. Be launching into something that it could kill on its own, or with a combination of like the 2 wolf packs going in, that could actually drop the thing. I think that would kind of be my ultimate strategy with it. But I think there's almost no reason for me to start it on the table, because because it shoots so far. I can almost guarantee to shoot what I want to shoot as long as it's an eligible target, right?
24 inches, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And it can move and then shoot, so it's like 29 inches.
Yes.
Right. What armies do you struggle against, and which armies do you feel you have the advantage?
I think that something like Sylvaneth or recursion armies can be a little tough. Just it depends on the map and on the positioning. Of course, like we talked about earlier, like Slaves and Stormcast,
Ironjaws,
and OBR, Ironjaws to some extent probably. Those like 3-up save with easy extra save bonuses, that's going to be a little challenging. You want to catch those ideally on maps that are not shifting objectives, and instead like limited resources or scorched earth, because you're going to shine in those maps in a weaker matchup. So of course you have very limited control over that, but just know that those are going to be uphill battles, and you're going to be needing to have strong target priority and use that weight of dice and just pray that they roll 1s and 2s.
Right. So obviously more objectives is better for you.
Yes, big time. And do remember that the Snarlfang Cav, they are +5 if they charge, and so if we can get a couple to touch this point, like that can actually be a lot on here on that turn. So that's where I was getting at with, when you're charging, what are you actually looking to do? Because sometimes they could off a charge like sneakily tag a point and now give it +5 that your opponent might not have been accounting for. So,
right, it's pretty easy to throw 10 control onto an objective on the charge.
Yeah, yep. And then what you're good into, stuff with low saves, of course, you're just going to chew up, because now your no Ren 2 damage attacks are really, really being felt. I felt like I did pretty good into Deepkin because I matched their speed and I just have a huge weight of dice. I did really well into Slaanesh. That felt pretty good. I think that stuff like Skaven, even cities to some extent, like I think those kind of things you're going to do really well into. And then stuff that's like a lot of 10-man units, like not crazy elite but not hordes, I think also you're just going to eat up, because anything with infantry is going to start to take crazy mortals from your Sunsteel Awilas, and then that weighted dice is really going to carry you.
Yeah, the Doom Diver does really well against low or against bad save units as well.
Yeah.
Because that reroll, there's not really a lot of punishment. If they have a 5-up save, it's like they're still not making saves if you reroll dice.
For sure. And honestly, because it's 3 flat damage, I'm re-rolling down to 0 rend almost every time if I have to.
Sure.
Because I want you to fail the saves. I want to just go. So
12 damage is a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, you have a 6-up save? It's like, right? Like, okay, let's do this.
And he's only 180 points.
Yeah, he's cheap.
I don't think I'm advocating for him to. He's not busted, but man, he feels great.
Well, he's easily, in my view, the best Gitmob unit that they put out, like by far.
Yeah. Him or Drog, right?
Him or Drog, and I think both play really well with trolls.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. And that is something you are giving up. Like, if these Sunsteel Wheelers were Trogs as bodyguards, like, that's objectively better than these guys for that specific role. This is a product of, well, there's not actually much better because I'm so bad attack profiles and so much cavalry, or so much companion on everything that there's not a lot of great options. So do what we can.
Yep, but again, you're trading, like, high saves in trolls for super fast speed and like maneuverability tricks with Gitmob.
Yep. A lot of zoning, a lot of like just straight blocking you can do. These chariot bases, they are the smaller chariot bases, but they can just take up a ton of space. And you know what? I know people are like, well, maybe you can't fight with all of them. I'm like, well, often I'm not even trying to, so that's cool. Only a couple need to fight. Like I said, normally the attacks are already bad, so I'm not trying to maximize at all times having super bad attacks, especially if the positioning or the zoning or the space taking is better for you than whatever attacks that we're going to not deal damage anyways.
Right. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. I feel like I understand Gitmob a little bit better than I did before, so I definitely appreciate it. Any other like shout outs or anything else you wanted to plug before we call it
a
day?
I'm a regular host on the Always Strikes Last podcast. We've got a YouTube channel, really great stuff, quite a few different hosts on there and guests. We always talk about local PNW tournaments, usually do list reviews or recaps of our run through. We try to go over all the new armies. We're just there for a good time. Check it out. Always Strikes Last.
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.